Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry, I did not realize it was 2 o'clock. We need to get started. I think most of you know me. I'm Reggie. I'm the CEO here. I'm getting ready to leave the room, but I wanted to say a couple things just to be sure everybody understands. I'll introduce our presenter here in a second. He will be presenting live. He is in St. Louis, Missouri, and he was the gentleman that our Board of Trustees contacted and arranged to have the survey that you all completed, to have that survey facilitated. The same gentleman then took the results of the survey, your responses, and put those into graphs and reports and numbers, and he's going to share that data with you today. Those same reports and data have already gone to the Board of Trustees. They ordered the survey. They wanted to know what was on your mind and what things were important to you. So that's what you'll see today. This is a one-way communication, and I apologize, we just didn't have a way to work it out. The presenter is presenting over, and I'm sure many of you have used Zoom, so it's a Zoom call, and we did not have the ability to set up our side for all of you to be able to talk with him, answer questions or whatever. He is, so he's not able to see you either. So think of it as a pre-recorded presentation. If you have questions, concerns, comments, whatever the case may be, we've established a pretty good protocol here of you communicate those to your floor chair or building chair. They communicate those to our leadership of the resident council. I meet with those folks every week. In addition, a number of the board members will be viewing the presentation either now, off-site, live, or after the fact, because there will be a recording, there'll be a link available. We are also broadcasting this now over Channel 360, as well as a YouTube Live link, and there'll be a recording replayed probably tonight or tomorrow. So that is the format here. Our presenter today is a gentleman named Steve Finkelstein, and Steve, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Steve works for a company called Experience on Demand. It is the same company that our CFO, Jack McKittrick, was working with as a consultant when I first met him here a year and a half ago. Of course, Jack is now our CFO and our employee, but Steve did a great job. He understood what the board was looking for. He put together, I think, a good survey. We got it distributed and returned to him. Then he has already met with the board for an entire day. They took a Saturday back in January and went through all of this material. So thank you for being here. For those of you that watch it afterwards, again, if you have questions, concerns, or comments, please share those with your floor chairs. And with that, Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Reggie. It's a real pleasure to work with your fine organization. I appreciate the opportunity to work with the board and their strategic plan, and that the input today is extremely critical going forward. But the main thank I want to make is thank you to you. We received great feedback, quality responses, very candid, and I can't thank you enough for the time and effort you spent in putting in the feedback for the survey. So let's get started and kind of go through the results. Again, today, the goal is to present the satisfaction survey highlight results. We had 112 responses, and that was broken down between the three facilities, Lakeside Building, Cove East, and Cove West. And you can see how many were completed. This breakdown is pretty close to the breakdown of the actual number of residents, which of about 205. So that gives us about a 55% response rate, which is excellent for a survey like this. So thank you again for your time and participation. There were 4 key questions that were asked at the beginning of the survey. It's important to understand why you selected Hearthstone Community. How would you describe your experience and the culture? And if there's one thing you could do to improve your living experience, what would that be? What would that be to make it more enriching, comfortable, and enjoyable? So let's kind of share those results. So in terms of the primary reason you selected the community, you can see some of the comments. Location, close to family. Location, close to green lakes and activities. The location, the ability to walk around and see the lake. But other reasons, it's a continuing care facility. You also had recommendations by friends. It's also a nonprofit, and it's faith-based. Those are the primary reasons that came up, especially in addition to the location, it's the outside ability to walk by Green Lake and just the overall surroundings to get outside when it's not raining. So again, those are the primary reasons. The second question was, how would you describe in your words your living experience? And the words that came out most frequently were things like friendly residents and staff, comfortable, convenient, friendly, and safe, friendly atmosphere and attentive staff, friendly residents and staff, caring and thoughtful people, comfortable, safe, great neighborhood, wonderful, caring staff. Again, these are the primary comments that were made in terms of describing your experience. And there was many comments made talking about the quality of the staff, and we'll get into some of the issues later, but the quality of the staff, the relationship with the staff came out very strong in the survey results. Now we'll talk about the culture. So the culture is like the personality of your organization. It's every day when you wake up, what does it look and feel like? Again, words like friendly, careable, comfortable and tolerant, residents are very friendly, well-educated and very nice neighbors, friendly, down to earth, caring, friendly, helpful, caring community. So caring came up a lot, community came up a lot. The residents' culture described as most inviting, inclusive, caring, supportive. Staff caring, kind, and supportive. Supportive, accepting, caring for one another. So you can see the words about caring, community, staff, residents, inclusive. These are wonderful ways of describing the culture. And a lot of this is used when you do marketing and branding and you ask somebody, what's the organization look and feel like? These are the kind of words. So I was very impressed with that. This is a critical question because if you could wave a magic wand, and I'm a magician, by the way, so hopefully sometime in the future I'll have a chance to come out to your facility and do some entertainment. But if there's one thing that you can do to improve the organization, what would that be? And there were many responses on this. And I can't see you, but I'm sure if I ask for a show of hands, how many people would like to see better Wi-Fi? Now, I'm sure, and I heard that a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, since it's been a couple months, that Reggie and the board have taken, and Hallie have been taking action on many of the recommendations going forward. So some of the things I'll be talking about today may have already been addressed, either in total or in process. Some of them still need to be addressed, but this is the one thing, as you being magicians could wave your magic wand. Of course, another driver. It doesn't do any good to have 3 vans and 2 drivers because people want to get out there and they want to start shopping or go to the bank, etc. So more trips. And you can't have more trips in a van without a driver. The other thing that came out loud and strong, and you can see the word communication across the top, is let's talk about what's going on with the residents, not just the residents in one facility, but all 3 of your facilities. And that they wanted to see more paper communication calendars than touch tone. And then also enriching the traits and events. So you can have movies and presentations by experts or dignitaries, but what other kind of things could you do? Again, better communication, and that's, I heard, it's been improving. This is a major problem in all long-term care facilities, and my mother was in one for 2.5 years, so I have a lot of experience, personal experience in your type of facility. Less staff turnover. The quality of the staff helps make sure the quality of the organization. And there were great comments made about the staff that's there. The concern was, how do we keep them and make sure we continue to get to know them better? Another area that came up was better quality food, and we'll talk about that in more detail. And I know there's been improvements switching to a different provider, but continue to do that. Better internet connections, again, that gets back to the Wi-Fi service. And then, again, keep improving the food and figure out better ways to serve it hot. So we'll talk about more specifics in the food, but if there's one thing, it looks like it's boiled down to better communication, better Wi-Fi, more trips by having another driver, better, again, communication, and continue to maintain your highly friendly, supportive staff. So let's go through the areas that were rated. So we asked questions about the comfort of your apartment or the pleasurement and facilities and building and grounds. And what about the common areas? Tell me about the dining room. Tell me about staff. What about your spiritual needs, your well-being and physical and intellectual well-being, and then the other amenities and the services. So these are quantitative ratings. They're on a scale from 1 to 5. So a score of 1 is very low. A score of 5 is excellent. Now, overall, you had 49% of the ratings were very good and 17% excellent. So that's 66% of all the ratings were in the very good, excellent, and that is outstanding. When I do this survey, especially the first time, it's normally in the 50 to 55% range. And then overall, excuse me, all the ratings averaged up for all those categories is 3.77. So you're approaching in the high fair range, moving into very good. So that's a very positive comment. Again, there's a few on the low side and about 25, 28% on the fair side. But overall, that's a very excellent response. So let's take a look at the different categories and then we'll go through them one by one. The bottom red line is fair. So that's, you want to make sure you get at least a 3. Very good is when you're approaching, in the 3+ range, 3.5, and then excellence when you get up into 4 and 5. So you can see the rating for the overall quality of the apartment, facilities, cooling, air conditioning, etc., is 4.2, which is in a very good range. Building and grounds is approaching a 4, 3.77. Safety and security, and we'll talk about that in more detail, is 3.81. Common areas, 3.71. There's only a few that were right around 3.5. One was dining room. We'll get into the staff, which was the highest rating of 4.21. In spiritual and well-being needs, spiritual needs, right around a 4. Physical and intellectual well-being, just at around a fair 3.5. And then other amenities, which had the lowest rating of 3.23. So let's go into a little bit more detail in those. The other question, which is probably the most important question, it's called the Net Promoter Score. And the question is, how likely are you to recommend the Hearthstone community to family and friends? And this is calculated 2 ways. On a scale from 0 to 10, there's a weighted average based on the number of responses for each of those scores. And that came out to 7.26, which is in the high good range. 8 to 10 would be in the very good range. And then the NPS calculation, it's a very complex calculation, but it also came out in the good range. So a large percentage of you would strongly recommend the Hearthstone community to your family and friends as they get older and have a need for independent living. And that came through on that first question of why did you end up choosing the Hearthstone? And some of the answers were family and friends recommended us, or I knew somebody that was living there. So this is probably of overall one of the most important questions, and those scores are really good. So after going through all the different ratings, all the different comments, and there were hundreds and hundreds of comments, these are the major themes. And I'll walk through each one of these with some specifics. Staff turnover, Wi-Fi, transportation, the elevator situation, the dining room and dining room food, security and safety, the residence center, overall communications, and guest apartments. So of all the comments that were said, we pulled those together, the ones that were most frequently talked about, and now what I'll do is walk through some major themes for each one. In terms of staff turnover, there was a very high rating in terms of the quality of the staff, the relationship with the staff, and many staff names were mentioned, although I took the names out. But the turnover was too high. And again, this is an industry that's very challenging for quality health. And so the recommendation was there's a need to recruit and retain the staff and to be proactive to retain the best. And I know from talking with the board and Reggie, it's a high priority, not just to hire staff, but to make sure you get the right staff and then do what you can to retain them and engage them. The second area was Wi-Fi. And ironically, I had several calls, kind of funny, during the survey where people said, my Wi-Fi shut down, were my answers still there? Some people called me back 2 or 3 times because there were issues with the Wi-Fi. Ironically, it was interesting. But again, the Wi-Fi needs to be more stable. It needs to be stronger and faster in all areas of the facilities, not just in the common areas, but especially in the living units. In transportation, more drivers. They'd like to see an extra driver for more trips and more planned outings that can take place, whether it's medical appointments, going to the bank, going to the church. And there was a question that was raised that I know is being looked into, is looking into getting a van with a lift for those people that need a lift with a wheelchair. So those things are, again, being followed up on. Hopefully, I'm going to hear some good news that there's more drivers and more trips. But again, that was the recommendation made by the people taking the survey. And of course, the next area is elevators. You need 3 running elevators at all times. Now, I know there were issues of trying to get people to fix it, to get parts, etc. But the goal is, got to have 3 running elevators at all times. And that was a high priority on the survey. In the dining room and food, there was a variety of comments. And I know there was special arrangements made for some of these, and I know they changed the food service a year ago or so, and they're still looking at whatever improvements can be made. But the comments that were most frequently made were, we want the food to be hot, especially the soup. We want more variety of food. In special needs, for example, vegetarians need more protein, and there wasn't enough choices of protein that were easier. Then there was a strong demand to bring back the salad bar. And one of the recommendations was, rather than, because of understanding the COVID situation created a lot of these issues, rather than have people make their own salads, to have a salad bar but have somebody serve it so you can still be safe and secure by having somebody serve it rather than a lot of people with their hands. And then the other thing, which I hope is being addressed, and I talked to one board member, and he actually went in and tried it out and said, yeah, the tables are too high, is the tables are higher than the chairs need to be, or the chairs are lower than the table. One of the two is wrong, and that people were borrowing cushions from the lounge areas of furniture to bring into the cafeteria to sit on those as cushions. So hopefully that situation is being resolved. But that, again, those were comments that were made throughout all the surveys. Then in terms of security, and again, this is really important, that the staffing, although there's supposed to be 7 by 24, my understanding of security, the staffing was not always there. Most of the time they were there, but not all the time. And some of the people that may have been late owls, late 9, 10 o'clock at night, at times they did not see somebody staffing at the desk. Also, that sometimes not everyone had to sign in. That some of the workers or people that maybe came in with the resident were not always forced to sign in or wear a badge. So hopefully this is being enforced more. And then the access to the second floor should be shut off so that to make sure people are secure and go through the front entrance. And again, put more emphasis on not allowing strangers to follow a person in, and then also staff the resource center. So those were the major comments about security. A lot of the things we're talking about, other than the elevator, should be easier to fix. And again, I heard that progress is being made, or at least plans are being made to address these. So let's move on. Safety is important. So people were very specific on safety needs. The sidewalk on the east side needs to be leveled and remove the bumps. That just having a caution with yellow paint is not good enough. Or in some cases where the sidewalk has been lifted up, is grind it down and level it off. Also to talk about the floors, and one was mentioned specifically, the floor on the second level is too slippery. People just need to be sure that when the cleaning's done, that they can address to make sure the floors are not slippery, at least notify with a sign or something so that people don't slip and fall. The residence center, my understanding, is not staffed like it used to be. So that's why they need more drivers and trips until that gets reinstated. People had questions like, I need a notary, where do I have to go? Or I need to cash a check. Many of these things, the banks are several blocks away, and that's where an extra driver would help to make those short-term trips for small 1 or 2 people. But again, down the road, maybe the staffing center could be reinstated. Communication, although there's a new automated system, Touchtown, people felt it's not really a replacement for your weekly newsletter, and that it'd be nice to have a paper calendar in the elevators. People rely on that a lot, and to show what the events are so that everyone can make sure that they can plan and attend the events that are most interesting to them. And then in terms of guest apartments, I believe there's only one, but the recommendation was to have at least one more. And then in those resident apartments, those guest apartments, to provide hot coffee, tea, and water in that guest room. So those were the major findings of the major themes. Now, this section on proactive ideas, I was very impressed with. And I know a lot of this is being done, but it's just to reemphasize what people said in their survey. So the theme of residents helping residents. How can we connect residents with each other that either have similar interests, like games, walking groups, movies, whatever it may be? How can we make sure the residents get together more often? Secondly, to have, and I know there are weekly and monthly meetings with resident leaders on different floors in the facilities, but people wanted to make sure that the Residents Council could meet at least monthly with interaction with not only the CEO, but with the board, so they could be involved in some of the decision making and priority setting. So with a lot of these recommendations, that's a great forum, and I'm sure that's being done. It's a great forum to talk about the things, make the list, and set priorities. And the third area, although a lot of these are related, is that there's many residents that have the time, the expertise, and the physical and mental capabilities that can help fill in voids where staff may not be available or something isn't accessible, that these people could be made available if there was more of a coordination. So I really applaud you, the residents and the leadership, Reggie and his team, that keep the residents involved, and just if you can continue to do that and listen to the voice of the residents. And this survey is the way to do it. This survey creates one vehicle, but your weekly meetings, your monthly meetings are great vehicles to get presentation to those key leadership on the needs and priorities of the organization. So let's look at demographics and then we'll wrap it up. As I mentioned at the beginning, 61% of the responses, or 68, were on the Lakeside building, 22% at Cove West, and 17% at Cove East. And again, that's a representative sample of your actual population. In terms of how long have you lived there, if you take a look at the first two columns, 73% have been there less than 5 years. Now you have 19%, 6 to 10 years, 6%, 11 to 15. So you have about 28%, 27% have been there more than 6 years. Some people, almost 8%, have been there over 11 years. So there's a lot of new people there. And as you take a look in the future with more surveys to measure the progress that's being made, it's those people at the beginning, by having the quality you're looking for, will have you continue on there as long as you need to be. So that's just to give you a perspective of, in terms of the tenure of the organization. In terms of age group, 67% are over 80. And I was impressed with somebody in their 90s that probably wrote the longest manual survey. It took a long time to key it in. But I think the passion that I saw and read, the quality of the responses, and the interest people took, I know was very appreciative when I presented this information to Reggie and his team and the board, and they valued the input. In terms of who do you live with, and I think that also helps to understand whether you live alone or live with a spouse or partner. It's about a 50-50 split. In terms of marital status, almost half are married, 31% are widowed, the others are across the other category. So in summary, I again would like to thank the board and Reggie and his team for being open to ask for the feedback and accept the feedback, and to do it with somebody from the outside, whether it's me or somebody else, so that you would feel more comfortable in candid responses. And then thank you again, especially the residents, for your time, energy, and commitment to making the Hearthstone the best place to be. And it will be the best place to be as you continue to provide open, candid feedback to your leadership, and they welcome that. So, in summary, this is the end, but I hope to see and visit your facility in the next 6 months to a year. Come around, walk the floors, and meet some of the residents, and maybe even put on a magic show. So that's the end of the presentation today. As Reggie said, this is being recorded. If you have questions, you can forward those to Reggie or I think there's some board members. And I look forward to hearing some good things from the board on the progress being made. And Reggie, that's it.